At the age of 5, along with my parents and 4 brothers, I was homeless. One of my earliest memories is as a child sitting on a toilet in a former church hall, casually swinging my legs, watching the rats play on the floor below. After a few months, social services, learning of our family's plight, found us a home in one of the most deprived areas of Gosport. As a family, we were both poor and hungry. Coats and newspapers utilised in the winter months in an attempt to keep us warm at night. Empty bellies fit to bursting in the summer from apples scrumped from the orchard, blackberries eaten off the bushes on the cycle track. And the joy of locating a plum tree remains with me. As the only girl in the family, I was frequently kept off school to take care of my mother, who suffered from poor mental health. My mother spent 3 months in the local psychiatric hospital as an inpatient. As a child, I looked through curious gaze as I observed the patients wandering the hospital grounds, their hospital attire, stark contrast to the natural world in which they found themselves. In the canteen, dark wood, harsh floors, patients sat on chairs, rocking, wailing, drooling. The empty, expressionless faces, and the look of fear in my mother's eyes. I was to learn decades later that my mother's poor health was due to unspoken childhood trauma. Despite the obvious challenges we faced in our childhood, it was not without joy. We were loved and we were kept safe by our parents. My father would make us push bikes and go-karts from other people's junk rescued from the tip. Halcyon days of summer where the whole family would camp at Stokes Bay Beach, the very first to arrive and very often the last to leave, only after the sun had gone down. In my backyard, gazing at the night sky, mapping the constellations and excited and amazed at the world I found myself in. And that excitement and those whoops of joy in August when that official letter dropped on the doormat advising us that we were entitled to school uniform grant, which meant we got to wear new clothes, no hand-me-downs or trousers, with a big turn-up as I seem to recall. Now, my family's backstory was not unique to us. It was a lived experience for many in my community. At the age of 18, I made a big decision. Walking through my family gate of my family home, I turned left. Turning left, I joined the military, turning away from what I believed was my predetermined path set by my postcode and fate of birth. You see, I was born in poverty, but like a lot of other people, I had potential. I had a proven track record of surviving. I could problem solve on my head all day long. I had buckets of resilience, and I could deal with adversity. Utilising the skills and tools that my childhood had given me, I turned left and I escaped poverty. At the age of 18, I found myself on an equal playing field. For the first time in my life, I was equal. I was treated the same as my peers. I wasn't the poor kid with the wonky haircut that my mum did. Thanks, Mum. I wasn't the girl who had shoes that were too big, stuffed full of newspaper, or the teenage girl who couldn't afford period products. I was treated the same as my peers, and I flourished. My self-esteem improved, my self-confidence improved, and I had a bubbling sense of self-worth. But most importantly, it buried those messages I had internalized as a child. After 10 years in the military, I came home to this town we all know and love. For the next 23 years, I served my community as a police officer in some of the most deprived areas in Gosport and Portsmouth. Entering family homes, I saw my childhood being replayed time and time again. I met bright, intelligent, curious kids, only to meet them again as adults to find their life force stripped away by circumstances and society's very low expectations. A young man, arrested again, told me his ambition, and he had ambition. His ambition was to be a better criminal than his father. And no doubt win his father's love and respect. He stayed in his lane. Young lady, 16, arrested for shoplifting. Homeless, tired of being caught in the crossfire of violence between her mother and her mother's new partner. Only to enter into the same relationship with a drug dealer. She never made her 50th birthday. My experiences as a police officer reignited my deeply buried feelings of shame and embarrassment as a child being brought up in poverty. As a volunteer for the local homeless project, preparing food and sharing shelter with our most vulnerable, I witnessed how care, compassion, and respect gently remove those hyper-vigilant masks that so many of our most vulnerable wear, revealing thoughtful, very often intelligent people with voices that matter, that are very often ignored. I recognised that all of us were almost existing under a cloak of shame, sewn together by the stigma and silence that surrounds poverty. Today, in Gosport, 1 in 5 children live in poverty. In 1936, nearly 100 years ago, George Orwell wrote a book, The Road to Wigan Pier. George recounts his lived experience with the working class and the poorest in the north of England. And as well as recounting their community resilience and love and support for each other, he talked about the 3 biggest challenges they face. Nearly 100 years ago, those challenges are exactly the same challenges that face those children today. Challenges around health, poor accommodation, and limited opportunity. Now I can feel you asking, what can we do to help? We can't solve poverty today, but perhaps we can all work towards a better landscape where we can start to remove the stigma and the silence that surrounds poverty. In the police service, there's a phrase. It's generally used when we refer to scenes of crime and gathering evidence. And I'd like you to hold that phrase in your head, if you will. The phrase is, every contact leaves a trace. As human beings, we are hardwired to absorb messages from the world around us. As children, we're like sponges, soaking up messages on value, worth, ability to achieve, and where we belong. My experience of working with the homeless and the transformational effect of showing care, compassion, and respect, identifying and seeing how that changed that vulnerable person to share their fears and go on to achieve a better life. Can't help but feel we could pull that lens back and create a landscape where our most vulnerable in the whole society feel happy and safe to share their vulnerabilities. by ensuring that every contact we have with everybody is doused with care, compassion, and respect. Because you all know now, every contact leaves a trace. In the lights, Jennifer Lopez, Jenny from the block, you know what her backstory is. Leonardo DiCaprio, Billy Connolly, these really big people, international stars, have all had different journeys, different paths, but there are common threads that they share. I nearly said thread number one. Number one, they all turned left out of their garden gate and escaped poverty. Number two, which is really important, they're very proud about it. They don't hide under a cloak of shame. They're not silent around poverty, and absolutely they shouldn't be. How can you be ashamed and silent purely by your date of birth and postcode? They are proud of what they do. But I can't help feel they are so far removed from our hometown to almost be otherworldly, things dreams are made of, but not really reachable. The nub of what I want to say now is to my community collective, to my kindred spirits, to my tribe, to all those people in Gosport who, like me, have turned left. Because ultimately, we can't be what we can't see. So to you, who start in life you made sure did not ensure your final destination. To you who harnessed what you learned from overcoming those tough challenges to give you a gritty, strong foundation. To you whose resilience was honed in the face of adversity, giving you strength and determination to turn left and escape poverty. If despite what you've achieved, you still feel like you're the smallest person in the room. Perhaps you quietly don't mention your background. Perhaps you subconsciously hide under that cloak of shame, stigma, and your very humble beginnings. I need you. Your town needs you. So, what I need you to do, if that is you, I need you to take off that cloak and throw it away. Because ultimately, by standing tall, glowing bright in our community, you will push back on that narrative that lives in many people's heads who live in poverty. That life-limiting narrative that says, people like me don't. Because actually that's not true. People like you absolutely can and do. My name is Lesley Meenaghan, and I turned left. Thank you.